should be going now. This is a video I thought about for a while. I wanted to do just try and pick 10 albums from the classic rock era that I thought were influential or at least so all round superlative that anyone interested in that era could pick them up and enjoy them as an introduction to that era and the music of that time. I grew up during the 60s, so I came on a lot of this stuff a little late, but still close enough to. I had an older sister who was acquainted with a lot of this stuff. Heard a lot of the stuff for the first time coming out of her room, so it's kind of interesting. But anyway, I'm going to try and do top 10 of classic rock albums that I think are a great start for a beginner, and I also have a whole pile of runner-up albums to go through. So let's start off with the Beatles. This is Sgt Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. It was made in 1967, the Summer of Love, and this is the Beatles' full-on plunge into psychedelia. There were hints of it on their previous Revolver album, especially the amazing song Tomorrow Never Knows. But this song has Lucy in the Sky and with Diamonds, Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, Mr. Kite, Day in the Life, just a whole bunch of classic Beatles songs. She's Leaving Home, of course, great ballad. But this is an album you can pick up, and it's a great introduction to the Beatles and what they were about. The one I've got here is the, 40th, 50th anniversary edition. It was remastered by George Martin's son, Giles Martin, and the sound on it is very good. We'll also talk a little bit about the sound quality of these albums. A lot of them, if not all of them, fortunately, have been remastered or remixed or otherwise reissued as superior sounding units to their initial introduction. Okay, that's one. You gotta have a Stones album. In the 60s, they were considered the greatest rock and roll band in the world. And God, it's so hard to pick just one Stones album, but I think Sticky Fingers qualifies. You have some great songs on it, Brown Sugar, Wild Horses, and my favorite is the last song, Moonlight Mile. But I mean, there's a whole bunch out there. Let It Bleed is another good candidate, as is Goat's Head Soup. I mean, you can argue about these. So it was hard for me to pick just one, but I think this one, if you want to know what the Stones is about, is a great place to start. And here we go. This, I have to get this out of the silly sleeve it's in. This is a deluxe reissue version. Sorry to shake the camera like that. Of the classic Who album, Who's Next. This, it's almost like a greatest hits for the band. I mean, it starts out with Bob O'Reilly with its awesome synth riff. You have Behind Blue Eyes, going mobile, and then it ends with the amazing anthem, Won't Get Fooled Again. And just the Who at their peak, Pete Townsend at his most creative. All of the guys just in top-notch form there. That's the picture I remember. But this is a reissued, remastered version. I forget whether it's 30th, 40th anniversary, but it is a great introduction to a great rock band. And again, I have another one in the runners-up. So going on in another album from, I believe, 1967, The Summer of Love. These guys debuted at Woodstock. How's that for a introduction to the world? You have three guys here who had played in other bands. Stephen Stills, this is Crosby, Stills, and Nash, their first album. Stephen Stills had come from Buffalo Springfield, a band that did an amazing anthem, For What It's Worth. I think that's what it's called. And then Graham Nash was from the Hollies, and oh boy, I'm getting them mixed up now. Oh God, I'm at a loss. But anyway, they were all accomplished musicians when they joined forces on this album. And it starts off with a bang with Stephen Stills' song Sweet Judy Blue Eyes. You've got Marrakesh Express on here, Wooden Ships, Helplessly Hoping. I like 49 Bye-Byes. It's a lot of fun songs. This began, it really cemented the popularity of country rock or folk rock in the popular music. And it later got to be worn out, but I went with this one. By the early 70s, I was so sick of country rock I could scream, but I still can listen to this without retching, so that shows how great an album it is. This is a late comer. There are going to be let's go with this one next, just because, again, 1967, classic, and you've got to have some psychedelia in this list. And start with the best, Jimi Hendrix, a man who just revolutionized the rock scene when he came out. No one played guitar like him. No one sang like him. No one wrote songs like he did. So this has a lot of classics. Are You Experienced? Manic Depression, Hey Joe. I mean, you can practically read the whole list here. Foxy Lady, of course. Just even the title song, Are You Experienced, is great. This is a reissued version. It's worth getting the remastered reissues of Hendrix, because these sonics on the original recordings weren't awesome. So, but they've done a wonderful job of cleaning them up. I forget who, let's see, I can't recall the name of the guy who did the remastering, but he's a legend. I think the same guy also did this album, which I'm going to free from its sleeves so we can get the more familiar album cover here. This Deep Purple's Machine Head, and we're going to have some metal in here, or at least proto-metal, or whatever you want to call them, but this is a great album. I mean, it's very high energy. Not everyone will like it, but there's so many good, strong songs on it. I can really recommend it. I mean, you start out with Highway Star, which you've probably heard, but they're just so many great songs. Lazy, of course, Smoke on the Water, which is one of the great anthems of the classic rock era. But I mean, you can just go on. Space Trucking, just a whole bunch of awesome songs by such a talented band. And when they start jamming, it's just amazing to hear. I can't recommend this highly enough if you haven't heard it. Okay, so we've talked about American folk rock. Let's talk about British folk rock. And the man everyone who is revered as a god in those circles has to be Van Morrison, who's he's an Irishman who has more soul than any other 10 white people. I mean, just an amazing guy. And but he melds rock and blues and Irish folk into an amazing algorithm. Also jazz. I mean, the title song Moondance is a jazz riff, but there are a lot of great songs on this album, from Moondance, Into the Mystic, just a whole bunch. And if you're kind of interested in British folk and I don't know, there are just so many bands that this man influenced, and literally listen to him, and he can do no wrong when it comes to his choices in songwriting and singing. Just a great album. Okay. Now we're into real metal here. This is, we're getting a little late. We're out of the 60s, definitely. This is, what, 71, I believe. This is the fourth Led Zeppelin album. It's usually referred to as Zoso, or I've also heard it called the Runes album, because there are these, where are the symbols? Forget where they hide them on this cover. Don't see them. Anyway, this has so many of the Led Zeppelin classics. The one I've got here is, of course, a remastered reissue. I think this came out, about 5-6 years ago. 2015, somewhere around there. But you've got Black Dog, you've got rock and roll music on it, and of course the rock anthem Stairway to Heaven, as well as When the Levee Breaks. Just so many great Zepp songs are on this disc. It's well worth getting. Okay. You can't have classic rock without the contribution of Eric Clapton, from Cream to, oh God, what's the other band? So many bands that he was in Britain in the 60s, and by the 70s he was a solo artist. And he did an album with Duane Allman of the Allman Brothers. This is Layla. And if you haven't heard Layla, you'll recognize it immediately when you do hear it, because it's one of the greatest rock guitar riffs ever done, which Clapton can lay claim to 2 or 3 of the greatest rock riffs ever, I think. But this came out as a 2 LP set, but it conveniently fits on 1 CD. But you have Clapton in one channel, Duane Allman in the other, 2 guitar greats trading off licks on a lot of great blues-inspired songs. The music is heartfelt, it's sincere, just awesome. I could listen to Key to the Highway forever, I think. It's just one of the great blues songs. But there's so many other ones, Layla, Bell Bottom Blues, you name it. But it's definitely a rock classic. This is a Mobile Fidelity Sound Lab SACD of that. So it's a higher fidelity version. This isn't my favorite version, though. That is this one, which is a music-only Blu-ray version of it. So you've got not only the regular version, I think you also have a 5-channel version as well. But I like the fidelity on this one. And I don't know if we've hit 10 yet, but we'll see. Let's see. I'm going to go with this band first, just because I don't know if we've done that many progressive bands, and we got to have at least one. And Yes would be the greatest of the progressive bands in the late 60s, early 70s. This is not their first album. Their first album's rather obscure and jazz-like. This is their second album, and it is amazing. Every song on it is good. Every song is exceptional, groundbreaking. What lured me in was Yours Is No Disgrace, which just amazing song. But you've got God, I can barely read that. Yeah, I've seen All Good People, Starship Trooper. I mean, there's just so many great songs on this, and they're just nice long jams played by a really tight jam band, doing just groundbreaking stuff. It's just an excellent album. Can't recommend it highly enough. Anyway, this is a remastered version. Don't believe it's a Blu-ray, but or SACD, but it's definitely a hi-fi disc version. And I think we'll close out the list. We probably already hit 10, but I'm going to close out the list with Dire Straits, Brothers in Arms. This actually came out in the 1980, I think. So we're very late here in the classic rock era. But this just a great album. Every song is good. Mark Knopfler's a great guitarist. This has the classic Money for Nothing song with Sting singing on it. But there's a whole lot of other just good songs. Not really, a lot of them are quite long and not really radio friendly, but Meeting Across the River, The Man's Too Strong, those. But you have heard So Far Away and Walk of Life, undoubtedly. They're all great songs. And you can't fail buying this one. So now we're going to go on to the honorable mentions here. And Supertramp, Even in the Quietest Moments. You've probably heard Give a Little Bit. It's a classic. And then this also is the title song, Even in the Quietest Moments. But again, they're an unusual band, but they're good stuff, quite likable. I could have also thrown Steely Dan in here with them. Rod Stewart, again, British folk-influenced rock, or actually Rod at this point, this was before he went pop, so this is a pretty bluesy album for its time, but this has Maggie May on it, which you've heard, but also has a great jam called I'm Losing You, and a lot of ballads. For the most part, the album's pretty soft and mellow, but it's just well done. Again, this is a Mobile Fidelity original master recording version. If you can find it in this, it's worth getting, even though they're getting to be collector's items and quite expensive now. Okay, I might get shot down for this, but I think Elton John's first three albums were great stuff. I mean, they were great rock albums. Maybe a little on the lighter side, but not. You know, this was before he went full on pop star on us. And this album is just great. He and Bernie Taupin just gelled on these songs. They're all bluesy rock songs with a country western feel. The theme is the Old West, as you can tell by the name of the album, Tumbleweed Connection. And this has his early trademark theme song, Burn Down the Mission, on it, as well as Country Comfort, Amarina. I could go on. There's Ballad of a Well-Known Gun. There are just a lot of great songs on this. There are no weak songs on this album. It's easily worth a listen. This one is an SACD of it, or yeah, direct stream digital. So it's they went around and remastered them all a few years ago, and they sound great. Okay, these guys may be controversial, but I'm going to throw them in here. Guns N' Roses, Appetite for Destruction. I consider them the last of the great classic rock bands, though I don't know. Some people dismiss them as just hair metal. Of course, there are some newer guys still carrying on the classic rock tradition, which is great. But I listen to Sweet Child of Mine, and I'm just enthralled by it still. It's one of those songs that, for me, I loved it the first time I heard it, never get sick of it. But this has a lot of other great songs on it, Welcome to the Jungle and so on. If you like your music harder, more metallic, you'd like this. And I couldn't leave out Jethro Tull. I grew up loving these guys. I had a period where I wore out just probably 2 LPs of Thick as a Brick. But I've chosen Aqualung here. Thick as a Brick is a concept album that takes up one full LP, both sides. This is a more conventional album in that there are actually normal length songs, a bunch of normal length songs on a single disc. And it has a lot of Tull's most well-known hits on it, from Aqualung to Locomotive Breath is my favorite. But you've also got Wind Up, My God, Hymn 43. Oh, God, they're all great. But they're interesting. They're about halfway between metal and progressive rock, because you have the flute, you have the classical music influence on them, but when you get down to it, there are a lot of great metal-ish rock and roll riffs on the album. Definitely worth checking out. So I know I've left out 10 people I wish I could talk about. I mean, there are just so many great classic rock albums, but this was just what I grabbed off the shelf in 20 minutes. So I hope you like this. I hope it was entertaining, educational, whatever. Anyway, thanks for watching. I would be remiss if I didn't mention Pink Floyd Dark Side of the Moon. I mean, it's another classic. I definitely went through a Floyd period. Nowadays, they're a little too slow and sleepy for me, but this is a great album. All the songs are strong. They're definitely a progressive rock band. I'm not going to call them psychedelic, but they were definitely, they tried to do some things that were out there and different. This album is a classic. I just yanked this one off the shelf, putting back the others, and realized, oh my God, I forgot to mention this. So I definitely throw this in with the top 10, 11, 12, whatever we're up to now. Anyway, thanks again.